Good morning, Natalie. How are you?
I'm great. How about yourself?
I'm wonderful, and I'm so happy you could join us today. And we were just joking for a minute off air that we were having some technical problems, but we've worked through them. I had a mentor, a wonderful woman, and my first job out of grad school, and she said, "Always, always, always expect your equipment to fail." Like that was her advice,
Oh,
and you know, and
right.
once again, she was right. Here
Here we are.
we are.
If you can be prepared for it mentally, then it's not so bad.
Well,
No,
and
it's not bad.
you're absolutely right because her advice there was less about being physically prepared and more about being mentally prepared, right? Like you can have backup cameras
100%.
and laptops and things for days, but if you let it rattle you mentally, then there's there, you have to recover, right? It's kind of what it comes
That's
from.
exactly
So,
right.
awesome. But here we are. Thank you, Natalie, with Natalie Weekly, the founder of Signature Style. And I'm so excited to chat with you today. I think it might be fun for you to just tell us a little bit about you to kind of start things off. But I'm most interested in you have a very sort of unique philosophy behind Signature Style. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about that as we kind of unravel everything that you've been working on.
Okay. Which one do you want to start
Let's start with
with?
you. Let's start a little bit about you
Okay.
and then a little bit about the kind of very, sort of specialized approach that you've built with the Signature Style and your philosophy.
Okay. Well, my name is Natalie, and I am based in Houston, Texas. I studied entrepreneurship at Baylor University and have worked in corporate for several years, had my business Signature Style for 12. And my very supportive husband has been along with me through that entire ride. We have two children. They are 10 and 7, which I've two girls, and I've heard that that is the absolute sweet spot. And I can attest that is the sweet spot.
I
It's
can.
so fun.
I have a 22-year-old daughter, and I can tell you that is the sweet spot. Yes, it is. Yes.
Right. I mean, we are living life as big as we can together because I'm like, listen, just stay. Remember these moments, okay?
Yep, totally. Yep.
So, a little bit about me. As I mentioned, I started Signature Style 12 years
Right.
purely as an image consultant,
Mm.
so personal stylist, working with people with their wardrobes and really wardrobes primarily, how they projected themselves through their clothes.
Mhm.
And then that has morphed over the years to include body language and communication, how we present, how we show up, and how people respond to us, what we can do with our body language to make people trust us more
Sure.
quickly and
Sure.
more into keeping the company. We both.
Yeah, I was interested to how, you, as you mentioned, you kind of started off more as an image consultant, but you have this tremendous focus now really on executive presentation, right? Executive
Mhm.
presence. Style, of course, goes a long way as part of that. You talked a little bit about
Absolutely.
body language and how do you sort of emphasize, Natalie, the importance of body language and communication in your coaching? How do you kind of couch that with people? Because this is hard, right? It's very hard for people sometimes to pick up on verbal cues, right? Or even
It
physical cues, right?
it is hard. And we want to think, I'm not judging you. I'm just come as you are, which is true. And
Mm.
also there are still a set of parameters that make it easy for people to work with you. And really that's what we're about. We're about
Yeah.
making it easy for people to get to who you are
Mm,
so that we can hear your ideas, so that we can hear and absorb and benefit from the skills you bring to the table.
sure.
So I like to think of it as I don't know if you're a huge theater fan.
I love the theater.
Theater
Yep. I was a
So
theater kid. I
if
was a
you were
theater
to
kid, actually. Yeah. So, yeah.
tell me the last role that you played.
So the last role I played was in The Mystery of Edwin Drood, and that's a like
Okay.
a whodunit mystery thing. And I actually played the part of a reverend in that, which is kind of fun. Yeah.
With the dollar,
Collar, sure, yeah, absolutely.
that's awesome. Well, think about it in terms of theater. We'll use Wicked as an example. It's been around for a bit.
Yeah,
If
sure.
you showed up to see the play and Elphaba is in a sweatshirt and she's reading off of her notes and she may still hit every single note, but she's reading off the script and she's dressed in the sweatshirt and she doesn't have the
Right.
green makeup on, we lose it.
Mm.
We're not following along with the story,
Yeah.
and you are in the business of and helping others tell the story
Tell
of
their stories. Sure.
themselves. That's what we're doing. We have 6 seconds to form a first impression with somebody, and so a lot of that is what they see and
Right.
how they that first vibe they get from you.
Right. Right. When you think about executives, so you that's a great example with Wicked, while you say, like, she may hit every note and she may be so beautiful in her delivery, but if the image isn't part of it, if the whole package isn't part of it, right? When you kind of
Right.
talk with executives and they're trying to align the image that they want to portray as a leader, right?
Mhm.
And their presence, how do you help them to make that alignment? Do you spend a lot of time sort of talking to them about the image they're trying to project? Or I'm just curious about your creative process there, Natalie.
So I do many things, but I would say it all boils down to one question that I ask people: what are the first 5 words you want someone to think of when?
Oh,
So interesting to see and hear how people answer that question.
sure.
I've worked with over 300 individual style clients, and one of the words that comes up the most is confident.
Mm,
Smell comes up, relatable comes up, trustworthy comes up.
mm,
But when you have, we've heard it in every business book. What is your mission? What are you working toward? What is your goal?
right.
It's the exact same thing, except in how you dress, how you present yourself, how you show up. We need to know, what do we care about? Do I
Mm,
care about being better than you? No. Do
right.
I care about being relatable? Yes. Did I struggle? Yes. The reason I started this partly was because I was an In Style magazine kid, and I would look through it and think, this is amazing. I could never wear any of these things to work. Also, my body does not look like this. And it was so frustrating for me and took so long to figure
Mm,
out my style. And then I figured it out, and people started complimenting me, and I was like, huh, I have never heard that before.
that's amazing.
But
Yeah.
maybe I can shorten that time for people. And so that's what I've
Mm.
been able to do.
I had a grad student that I work with come to me just over the weekend, and it was kind of timely to this conversation today. And she was going through a personal development exercise, and she said, "Can you know me very well? Can you provide me with 2 examples when you have seen me at my best?" And I had to really think about that, right? And this is an individual who has a lot of humility, she has a lot of grace, she has a ton of commitment and dedication to the people that are important to her. Um, and no matter what the situation is, she's like one of those always want to jump in and help people, right? So do people kind of ask you questions like, how can I be at my best? Or is that part of the process as well, Natalie?
It is absolutely, because I'm in the business of taking the beautiful parts of you that are inside and showing them out,
Mm,
because we all have skills and talents and perspectives that
mhm.
the world needs
Right.
and your circle needs. Whatever your sphere of influence is, even if it is a sphere of 1 or 2, they still need to hear from you and be able to hear from you easily.
Mm,
So we definitely talk about, especially with leaders, often leaders are tasked with uh, a passion project.
right.
What is your passion? What is the
Right.
thing that you're going to care the most about? You see it a lot in residents, actually,
Sure.
with the spouses. Like, what is is it
Right.
education? Is
Right.
it food? Is it whatever the thing is?
Right.
And that same thing happens in the
Literacy.
corporate
Yeah.
world as
Yeah.
well.
Interesting. You are wearing a beautiful blouse today. And me not
Thank
not
you.
so much, but you talk about
I can help
the
you.
psychology of color, right? Thank you.
I do.
And how color choices are aligned with branding and presence. And I actually had one person say to me, a CEO actually that I worked for, and I came into the office and he was like, "Wow, you wear blue a lot." That, like, he just said that to me, like, kind of random,
Excellent.
right? He was like, "You wear blue a
Hmm.
lot," and I was like, "Do I? I guess I do." Um, so talk to me a little bit about you know when you discuss the psychology of color and sort of the considerations individuals should keep in mind. I know it goes beyond I'm an autumn, I'm a fall, like I'm a summer. Like
It
tell me
does.
about that. Colors for occasions, I guess, Natalie, I guess would be part of it.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
So, especially for people who might be starting in the corporate world, I always tell
Mhm.
them buy navy, get the navy suit.
Oh, okay, so
Wear
I'm doing good with
blue,
the blue. Okay.
just like, yes, just like you've said. So well done. Excellent. Kudos to you. I am teasing you about the gray because if I wore gray, it would be a sad state of affairs. I do not look good in gray. I do tell, so blue is about trustworthiness and reliability
Hmm,
and loyalty. So
hmm,
it's such a great work color. If you think about it from a
sure.
male clothing perspective, typically the button down blue shirt and khakis, that is the trustworthiness, loyalty, and then brown is typically associated with reliability. And
Interesting.
so it's a good combination for work.
Hmm, very interesting.
Often newer employees go out and buy a black suit, which is helpful to have eventually in your wardrobe.
Sure.
But also, I feel like we always know the new people because they are the ones
That's what they're
wearing
wearing. Yeah,
suits.
yeah.
So with navy, instead, it's a universally flattering color. It looks good on all skin tones. And then when you go in to negotiate money, when you're talking money, when you might
Mhm,
feel like you are being passed over, when you need to show some more assertiveness and
mhm.
more presence, that's when you would wear black.
Interesting. That's so interesting. I had a
Mm-hmm.
guest on the show a little while back, and she was wearing this beautiful green dress, and it looked so beautiful on her. And she was talking about
Amazing.
green as this sort of abundance and that kind of aspect of
Mm-hmm.
green. So it was very interesting conversation that we had. I want to
Sure.
also unpack with you sometime the psychology around wanting to buy new clothing when you start a new job, even though everybody at the new company that hasn't seen your existing wardrobe, but you have this psychology.
That's a good point. And I think it's related to new chapter, new me kind of
Sure.
concept of, okay, this is a new, so I want to be the best version of myself.
Right.
So we're
Amazing.
a little bit more willing to invest and put the effort in
Yeah.
when we know for sure we want it to be the best version of ourselves.
So speaking of corporate America, you have quite a
Mm-hmm.
few name brand corporate clients, Natalie, under your purview.
I do.
Talk to me a little bit about if you're talking to me as sort of an individual and, the conversation or approach you might have with me kind of versus when you're working with corporate execs. I'm kind of interested in the corporate exec versus the individual clients and how your approach kind of maybe morphs or shifts through that process.
Mm-hmm. Some of it is the same
Mhm.
because ultimately we are all the same, no matter your title. But when I'm speaking with, I would say, well, when a corporation has hired me
Yeah.
to come in and speak to their group, we are often talking about how, I mean, skills can be learned. Having emotional intelligence and knowing how to navigate the nuances of
Mhm.
a very hard environment because it's people. We mess up all the time. We are going to get irritated and tired and hungry and
Right.
whatever else we're going to get that day.
Yep.
That also can be, but knowing that we do have to put the effort in to learn those skills.
Mm.
So a lot of times I'm talking about it in the corporate exec world, the skill set is a little bit more important. And also,
Interesting.
have you read the book, What Got You Here Won't Get You There?
I haven't. No.
It's, it's very much about when you are rising through the ranks of corporate America, it's all about doing your job.
Right.
How well you can execute on a deadline, how well you can execute on
Makes
whatever
sense.
project,
Sure.
of course. But then when you're promoted and you're in the management and director and executive level, now you need to know how to read body language. Now you need to know how to read facial expressions.
Mm,
Now you need to know how to diplomatically handle a nuanced conversation
mm,
where maybe this person is right in your opinion, but you're sitting there with two that you have to jointly come up with a solution for both of them because they both
right.
work for you and you
Right.
don't want to pick off one person and not the other. So it's a lot more, the gray lines are harder. So having as many of those emotional intelligence skills and abilities, a little bit just like what we talked about in the very beginning, preparing mentally for,
Right.
okay, how can I prepare for a hard conversation? What are some things I might say?
Mm,
Maybe that's stressful for you. Coming up with a
sure.
solution or coming up with a feedback right away is stressful. Then just say, tell me more.
Right.
That's
Right.
such an easy first step
Right.
so that
Say more about
then
that.
you can
Say more about
process.
that. Yeah, yeah.
Yes,
Yep.
you can process. They also will feel like I'm actually being heard right now.
Right,
This is
right. They wanna
amazing.
hear more. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yes. And then you can process and use that to then figure
Mm.
out, how do I need to handle this situation?
That's great. I mentioned a few seconds ago about the grad student, and I was saying that some of the opportunities when I've observed her at her best was when she kind of had the grace and the humility, but she always maintained her
Mm,
self confidence as well. You talk about EQ, emotional intelligence, awareness, right? Um, and you just kind of talked a little bit about how having that sort of humility or tell me more or opening that up. Is there something very specific that you really try to ask your executives to focus on? Because I've certainly been with executives who, unless the person is in a full emotional breakdown, they can't tell that that person is upset, right? So you talk about some of the cues, but are there nuanced things you try to help them kind of work through, or traits, I guess, as part of this beyond sort of emotional intelligence?
that is such a good question.
Mm,
And I would say it is so different for each person on what it is that they might need to work on.
mhm.
A very easy starting place is micro expressions.
Mm,
It is whatever the person's first reaction is on their face
interesting.
before they've had a chance to morph into, okay, no, I'm not angry.
Either
Hey,
the defensive mode
fine.
or yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yep,
before they flip into that. So I tell people a lot of times, and it's hard because your camera isn't always where the person is, but on Zoom especially,
sure,
and in person, don't look down to deliver. We're going to have to cut a quarter of our staff
right.
because then I miss out on the opportunity of how people are truly
Seeing
responding
it.
in that
Yeah,
moment.
yeah.
So that is such an easy first step
Mm.
of really paying attention to the micro expressions and how someone's face responds when you're delivering it.
That's really important, and I'm already, dialing back through my memory of when leaders that I've been, working under have delivered bad news, and did they look at you or did they not look at you, or how did they how did they
Right.
handle that? Yeah. Your work has just really um uh continued to evolve, Natalie, from the work you're doing in personal branding, personal styling, executive presence, executive coaching. You're now doing a lot of media, you're now doing a lot of public speaking. How do you
Mhm.
translate your work up into when you have to do media appearances or you have to do a public speaking engagement? And I mean, I'm sure part of it is your own personal brand and style, but how do you bring that
Of course.
into, how does it, because I know every entrepreneur we talk to, they think about, well, I'm going to start here and then I'm going to add more offerings, and I'm going to add more offerings. You've clearly continued to evolve and, add more to what you're doing. Talk to me a little bit
Hmm.
about how, you've kind of segmented, I guess, into media and public speaking as a part of what you also do with Signature Style.
Okay. I
Mhm.
have two responses. Hopefully I can remember them both. The first
Okay.
one is my background was actually in public speaking,
Ah,
not within a company.
okay.
And I remember before I started my business, I spent about a year crying at my desk. And when I would describe my job to people, it sounded so cool. And then when I would go to work, I would just be like, this is awful. I don't like it here. It was terrible. And this is so frustrating because all of my experience adds up to training and I don't want to do training.
Sure.
Turned out that I just wasn't speaking about this. I was speaking about some of the things that I was, what set me apart in my
Mm,
industry now, because there are not as many who are image consultants who are also speaking. So it
sure.
has such an advantage there. And I'm very grateful for that.
Mm,
And then you talk about evolving
yeah,
both in content and myself evolving. One of my
sure.
main personal brand goals is to always be better than I was yesterday.
Awesome.
And that's a little bit of how I started this business because I want that for other people as well.
Right.
And so I actually, until you asked that question, I've never thought about it this way, but I have an unexpected advantage in that as I am writing a new course, trust building, for instance, or the emotional intelligence one that we've talked about.
Sure.
As I'm writing that, I'm both sharing my expertise and I'm also learning more nuances as I go.
Mm.
So I have a little bit of a crash course training program for myself also of, oh, I haven't applied that in a little while. I've
Uh-huh.
forgotten about that. So now, now I need to apply that and add that little piece. And so that's helped me because I'm attending my own training while I'm also preparing to give it to others.
It's amazing because in the role that you are in, right? It's the we're going to use the drinking your own champagne metaphor, right? So you've got to
Fantastic.
you got to be doing that, right? I mean, um,
Totally.
you mentioned your courses just a second ago. Let's talk a little bit about how organizations or clients can engage with you. What are the kinds of things that you offer them and you can bring to the table for them?
Oh, wonderful. Thank you for asking. I do the psychology of style presentation quite a bit. And then I have had many companies hire me to do the complete leadership development course
Mm.
load. If you go to my website, you can click on speaking and see most of it. Excuse me. But with the presenting with presence has actually been something very, very popular lately. Uh, companies wanting their people to be able to communicate their ideas well, whether it is here in this podcast, or whether it's on a
Sure.
Zoom call, or whether it's in a team meeting in your office, or if it's in front of 100 people, whatever it is, the ability to communicate well is challenging in of itself, but
Yes.
then the skill set is not as common as it has been in the past.
Hmm.
In Instagram and TikTok versions, that is one style of communicating.
Sure.
It's very rapid fire and it's short. But then if I am in front of a group, that doesn't quite work. I have to add more story. I have to add more depth. I have to
Right.
add more content
Hmm.
so that you can understand a little bit more of what's going on. So
Makes
the
sense.
presenting with presence has come up quite a bit. And then moving the trust building and effective communication and all the things that we always need a little work.
Sure. And do organizations kind of usually engage with you? Is it like a project based, for lack of a better word, Natalie? Do they retain you? How does that kind of happen or is it all just depend
Oh,
on what their needs are?
it really depends on what their needs are. Often it's for, I mentioned, single session, or then they'll say, one that I'm doing for a hospital here in Houston is we we have this executive program that we are offering to our leaders. They are not necessarily ready for promotion, but we want them to know, one, that we are investing in them
Nice.
and we are giving them the tools and the tools to then be ready when it is.
Right.
And so we put together an 8 course load that is
Oh, wow.
personal branding, even just how to develop your personal brand. I walk them through the entire exercise of not just those first 5 words, but what are the things that you are most passionate about? What does it look like in your career? What does it look like in the skills and the ways that you have shown up in the past? Question that your grad student asked you was fantastic. I want to go ask everyone that for myself now. So because that is so good. That's such a great skill. And when have you seen me at my best? Because it's the hardest for us to
Sure.
see what is it that's great that I bring to the table,
Right.
and that's just a great way to
It's
find
hard to see through that sometimes. 100%. Yeah,
it. It is
absolutely. Yeah. We're all our own worst critic, as you say, right? So it's very true. Yeah.
absolutely.
I want to ask you a question that I'm assuming you've probably been asked before, maybe not, I don't know. But I think of like Steve Jobs. And Steve made a very specific decision about his personal brand. And I think he tied it to like his strategic mindset, right? Which was like, I need to focus
Hmm.
on the job at hand. So I can't be worried about anything else in my fast-paced environment. Do
Hmm.
clients ask you to help them sort of balance style while maintaining their strategic mindset, or even just like, look, I don't have time, Natalie. Like, how do I find the time?
Hmm.
How do you kind of balance that? Because a lot of your clients are high level professionals, right? So,
Yes.
and
Yes.
again, I found Steve's decision to just go with the uniform approach, right, as something that
Hmm.
was, I believe his justification for that was, I just I can't worry about it. I have to just focus on,
Correct.
you know.
That is what I have heard about that decision as well.
Yeah.
It's funny that comes up quite a bit. And also, I do not see a lot of people replicating that.
No.
It seems to be just him.
Yeah.
And that he was the one that, and that was his brand, and that was amazing.
Yeah.
I do help people because we talked about colors earlier. So I help people a couple of ways.
Right.
First of all, when I'm working with a personal style client, I'm saving you hours. I mean, I can't even begin to tell you hours upon hours upon hours because we're getting it done quickly
Right.
and you don't have to think about it. And then one thing I do at the end is put together a lookbook for people where I'm actually putting together the ensembles. We take a photo of them. I'm not responsible for the laundry. That's on you.
Mm-hmm.
But I do help make sure that you know how to put the pieces together.
Right.
And then the third piece of that is when you are working within your personal coloring. So if I'm consistently buying things that look the best on me,
Mm-hmm.
certainly there's some trend things we may throw in, whatever. But what's for me personally, it would be burgundies and some of the olive greens, plum, and this color that I have on today.
Right.
Those colors are all great for me. So if I'm consistently putting those pieces in my closet, it makes getting dressed 1,000 times easier because ultimately this burgundy floral shirt is going to go with this burgundy pant and poof, I have an outfit and I
Right.
can
Overthink it. Yeah. And you can move quickly when you need to move quickly, right? When you're trying to get
yes.
your two kids out the door and everything else associated with and
Yes.
heading.
Ultimately, clothes are a means to an end. I mean,
Right.
yay, clothes are fun, but ultimately, we have a job to do. I want people to be able to feel great, look great, and walk out the door and then think about everything else.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I feel a lot of what you are focused on too, Natalie, is really like the authenticity piece of because what I hear from you is like, don't don't do anything that is a betrayal or a departure from your authentic self. And do people sort of say to you like, look, Natalie, that's just not me. I can't. So when someone says that to you, like, how do you kind of talk about the opportunity for them to maintain their authenticity, but also potentially
Mm-hmm.
kind of, you know, do some of the things they might need to do as part of their branding?
Sure.
Yeah.
A great question. And what I usually have people do is do small.
Mm.
We'll say I have not done it correctly in the past where I can think of one client in particular who was, we'll say she was here with her knew what she was going for. I knew it would look amazing on her based on her survey. I wasn't just putting my own personal style on her, but I tried to go here and it was too much. She's like, that's too far. So what I typically do is help people if I can take them to the first step of, okay, let's just elevate your
Mhm.
current look. We're just
Mm.
going to elevate. We're not going to change exactly. It is changing, but it's minor change.
Sure.
And then once people see that elevation, once we bring in some of those new pieces, once they see how they feel in those things, then it all starts clicking. And then they're like, oh, I get it. I get what
Right.
we're going for. And this is still me. It's just elevated.
Yeah.
Um,
I like
that is
that.
really what I mean.
I like that. It's still me, but just like it's like new and improved or better, but yeah, but still me. Yeah. At the core, it's still me. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh,
Absolutely. Because it's too hard to maintain if it's not you.
right.
It needs
Yeah.
to be you.
Yeah, absolutely. Back to your corporate clients for a second. I am curious about, I hate talking about the pandemic, but here we are. We're still talking about the pandemic, right? And I'm interested with your corporate clients and now how how they are engaging you. And I'm assuming, but I don't want to over assume, that there's probably some pieces where they want to engage you around like virtual presentation versus in person, or maybe returning to
Mhm.
in person. And you've already talked a lot about body language and presentation
Mhm.
and your communication coaching. Is it still a lot of balance, Natalie, where your corporate clients are saying, look, we need people who can be really engaging virtually, but also in person, or is it sliding back to more in person? I know it's all going to be different depending upon the situation, but I'm curious as to how you've been balancing that as a consultant.
Sure. The landscape has changed, I would say, permanently,
Mm,
in that there is always a level of online. I mean, us here today,
yeah,
I don't know that we would have immediately thought of that in 2018.
right.
We would have figured it out. but it's not the first thing that we would have thought of. Where now it's like, well, of course we can do this.
Right.
We'll just hop on a Zoom and we'll
Right.
do this and it'll be great.
Sure.
So I am getting requests for both things. One, people are out of practice
Mhm.
because
Yeah, they're
they've been at
rusty,
home.
right? Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And it's a skill set to communicate, and it's a
sure.
skill set to show up well every single day. And what are the things that we want to project, and how do we want to act, and all of those kinds of things. Because you are representing yourself, but also you are representing the company that you work for.
Yeah,
And so the skills of in person, we talk about all the time, and then also the virtual language as well. One thing that I've done that I cannot recommend enough is if if you're listening and you want to do this, just email me immediately because we have done Zoom consults where I literally redid the person's background. We talked about what to wear. We talked about whether or not, and this, if we're working with a female, makeup, jewelry, what's important, what's not, how to immediately convey what it is that you want to convey on Zoom because it is nuanced. It does change a little bit. Where I might wear a well, I mentioned navy. If I wear a very dark navy suit on this call, first of all, it would be a
sure.
bit overdressed. But then second, it would be very flat. And so you would just see between my ginormous tree and me, there would just be a solid swath of color and then just my little face
Face,
that would
yeah,
be
yeah,
appearing
just a
here
floating head, yeah.
versus yes, which not good. We do not want a floating head.
Right,
So having a bright color that also complements my skin tone and my hair, then you see the whole person that and you want to fill up that frame because
right,
in person we have the full body that conveys power and presence. On Zoom, we have this box.
right.
So we have to do as much as we can with this box. And I've done some consults that way, and it's so fun. It's gone from no to I'll buy whatever you tell me. Do it. Yes.
That's pretty impressive. Wow, that's great. I like how you
Great.
said too, people email you right away. And I do want to say, for folks that want to get in touch, natalieweekly.com. That's WEAKLY, weekly.com, natalieweekly.com.
Mm-hmm.
One last question, if I might, for you. It's a little bit on the sort of aspiring professionals. Back to
Sure.
the grad student I was talking to. You mentioned sort of like just try to move a little forward each day. But ultimately, when a young professional comes to you and they're trying to think about what is their own signature style, right? And they're trying to blend maybe some cultural aspects into it, right? Or things
Mm-hmm.
that are maintaining their authentic self. And we hear a lot in the news, unfortunately,
Mm-hmm.
about, sort of, oh, you can't wear your hair that way, or you can't, have
Right.
this religious ordination or what have you. What are just some of the practical first steps you might give some of those young professionals that they can start their journey, Natalie?
It is a hard landscape. I know
Mm,
there is so much, but I encourage you as much as you are able when you are starting out, especially. It's a little bit like cooking with a new recipe.
mhm.
Follow the rules before you break them.
Nice. I
Understand
like
what
that.
it is that it's supposed to look like, how it's supposed to fit in first. And then you have a chance to expand from there. Now, I understand with some religions, there are some, like head coverings, for instance, that are required. Of course, you need to wear that. I do encourage, though, those who are wearing head coverings, that is when personal coloring really matters.
Oh,
Use
interesting.
the colors that are most
Yeah,
flattering for your face
that makes
because it's
sense.
the thing that's
Sure.
so. Sitting in with the position that you're in. Actually, I have a speaking engagement this week that
Mm,
is to law students. And many are going to law, going into the law field for the first time for their families,
mm,
and they are not necessarily what you would expect to be or what the current typical law person is.
mhm.
And that is one of the things that we're going to be talking about is do the navy suit, do the white, do the very traditional, is the most conservative, most traditional industry at the moment.
Mhm.
Do those things first. As you are established, as people know you, as people understand, certainly you have some flexibility, but as you are entering and getting until you have the job, you
Right.
need the job first in order to change the culture. So get the job. And then you can do some of the nuances and forward
That's fabulous. Get the
that.
job, then do the nuancing. I like it. I like it very
Yes.
much.
Yes.
Oh, you are so engaging. I can see why your clients want
Thank
to have
you.
you as a part of their journey and their branding. Once again, Natalie Weekly,
Thank you.
WEAKLY.com. Thank you so much for being here today. And we're going to be paying close attention to everything that you're doing. So thanks again.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.